4 years before Jaws made people afraid of the ocean, the Poseidon Adventure made people afraid of cruise ships, as they should be. Even if you don't capsize because of a giant wave, there are a million other ways that you can and will die on a cruise. And the Poseidon Adventure is just one of many disaster movies that were produced in the 1970s. And then after 1979, the disaster bubble burst, and the 80s were all about body swapping and mind melding. And then when the cocaine ran out, the 90s brought the disaster movie roaring back. And we've had a decent output of movies with the Statue of Liberty being destroyed ever since. The SS Poseidon is a luxury liner that is making its final voyage with a New Year's cruise from New York City to Athens, where she'll be decommissioned. Leslie Nielsen plays the captain of the SS Poseidon, and as someone who was first introduced to Leslie Nielsen as Lieutenant Frank Drebin, it's always fun to be reminded that he was mostly a dramatic actor in his earlier career.
Where the devil did you come from?
From my cabin, sir.
Don't you realize that it's dangerous out there?
You said come up anytime. Robin Shelby, remember?
I do remember, and don't call me Robin Shelby. And I love that he looked the oldest he ever would at age 45. And the captain is battling a strong storm, and we learn that the evil owner of the Poseidon, Mr. Lenarkos, cut corners on the ship to squeeze as much money as possible out of it. We then meet the rest of the doomed characters, and you've got police officer Mike Rogo and his wife Linda, who's a former prostitute, and is now seasick along with most of the other passengers.
Use one of these now, Mrs. Rogo, another in 8 hours, and remain in bed until the sea is totally calm.
And how the hell is she going to swallow them pills when she can't even swallow water?
Oh, they're suppositories, Mr. Rogo. You don't swallow them.
You mean she has to swallow them with her butt? You have Mr. Martin, played by Red Buttons. And now, I don't know how many suppositories he took, but judging by the way he's walking, I'd say all of them? Yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Rosen, played by Shelley Winters, and Grandpa Joe himself, Jack Albertson, who played all of his characters as though they were unable to walk for the first half of all of his movies.
I like that man.
Oh, of course you like him. Why shouldn't you? He runs on time, like a train. You and trains.
What? She just mentioned that she liked a fellow human being. You brought up trains. The Rosens are going to Israel where they're supposed to meet their grandson for the first time. You have brother and sister Susan and Robin Shelby, who are meeting up with their parents when the ship reaches its destination.
Hey, did you know this? The engines on this ship have more total horsepower than all the cavalry Napoleon used to conquer Europe. The ship's generators create enough electricity to light Charleston, South Carolina, and Atlanta, Georgia. I'm going to the engine room. The third engineer promised to show me the propeller shaft.
Oh man, he's one of those kids. You know, the ones with just that singular focus on one subject. They're either really into dinosaurs, trucks, or outer space. Or in this case, boats. He's like a horse girl, but a boy. He's a boat boy. Or a ship lad. Gene Hackman plays Reverend Scott, who's been relocated to a mission in Africa as punishment for his radical ideas, because Reverend Scott doesn't believe in the power of prayer.
Get down on your knees and pray to God for help, and then maybe everything will work out fine. Garbage.
Nobody likes to talk to their boss. And Reverend Scott delivers a sermon about not praying to God for every little thing, instead doing things for yourself with the gifts that God gave you. And as someone who was raised Catholic, can I just say that going to church when on vacation? No. Total ripoff. It's like those people that work out when they're on vacation. What's the point of vacation?
Do you know what it means to be picked out from all the people on this boat to sit at the captain's table on New Year's Eve?
Sitting at the captain's table? That sounds like an absolute nightmare. If that was me, I wouldn't want to go either. What the hell am I going to talk to a boat captain about?
You're still afraid some bum will recognize you. You can't keep going around all the time being afraid that every guy you bump into is a former customer. You weren't on the streets that long. How the hell many guys did you know? Linda, you hear me?
Yeah, I think everybody on the ship heard you. Including Robin Shelby, who is now learning about boats and hoes.
Boats and hoes!
I saw a young officer on deck the other day, and he looked pretty damn familiar.
And Mrs. Rogo, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that if you did run into any of your old customers, I'm pretty sure your secret would be safe. They would be shitting their pants more than you've already done on this trip. Now, this is the 70s, on a cruise, at a New Year's Eve party. It's gotta be insane, right?
Keep on looking for the light. Oh, can't you see the morning after?
Okay, I guess you gotta really ramp up to it. Oh, here we go. This is more like it.
What is the little green one for?
It's essential to blood formation, neural function, and growth.
Okay, dong pills. Makes sense. What else you got?
And the yellow one? That's very attractive.
A tocopherol. derived from sea germ oil.
It looks like vitamin E to me.
It is, Mr. Rosen.
If I'm sitting at this table, I'm just staring off into the middle distance because I'm trying to leave my body.
All you need is a pretty wife.
My wife can't stand seeing anyone who's not married.
I'd like to be married, Mrs. Rosen. I just can't seem to find the time. Mrs. Rosen, when you see your grandson, tell him not to become a haberdasher.
He won't become a haberdasher because no one knows what that is. Or maybe Mr. Martin's pills are starting to kick in. He was trying to say hamburglar. I don't know.
Mr. Tinkham, are you married?
No marriage for me, Mrs. Rosen. I've got a mistress.
What?
The sea.
Ugh, yeah, that's sparkling wordplay. Any place that has communal tables better have an open bar. Like, this party would make me break out in hives. And like, every table is more boring than the last.
Tell me, sir, just what does a purser do?
Well, in spite of anything you may have heard to the contrary, he really runs the ship.
I literally had zero preconceived notions about the day-to-day business of a purser. If you would have asked me what a purser did, I would have probably said they make purses, but I would have known that it was incorrect as I said it.
Not the captain, the purser. You see, the Poseidon isn't really a ship. It's a hotel with a bow and a stern stuck on. And I'm the hotel manager.
So his big flex is that his job description basically matches that of a hotel manager? Did he expect people to ooh and ah about that? The captain gets called to the bridge because an underwater earthquake was reported, and they spot a giant rogue wave heading right for them, and they sound the alarm, but it's too late, and the wave hits and the boat capsizes. Now, a lot of people die in the initial hit, including this dude who bragged about being in a committed relationship with the sea. Yeah, your wife turned out to be a bigger whore than Mrs. Rogo. The rest of the survivors need to formulate a plan, because right now their biggest threat is the ocean that wants to consume the whole ship. Oh, and their second biggest threat is getting crushed by Christmas trees.
Listen to me, everybody! Listen to me, please! Please stay where you are!
I lost my contact lens, and I don't want anyone to step on it. Everyone fan out and look for it. They realize that since the boat is upside down, they need to climb up to find rescue through the hull of the ship. And so they hoist the murder tree up so they can climb out on it. And no disaster movie would be complete without that one random dude that is opposed to every decision the main characters make to survive.
Pray for us, but don't do this! Climbing to another deck will kill you all!
And sitting on our butts is not going to help us either.
Like, I have nothing but respect for the office of purser, but this is well outside your jurisdiction. I think. You didn't really explain your job very well. So they send Robin up first because if it's unsafe and he dies, then no big deal, because he doesn't even contribute to the economy.
What about all those other people?
Well, I checked IMDb. Their characters don't even have names. One of them is called Lady at Party, for God's sakes. Only round up the people who've spoken on screen so far. Okay. And then Reverend Scott begins sending passengers up, and you start to notice a disturbing trend.
You can't climb in a long gown, so it'll have to come off, okay? Okay, Mr. Rogo, up you go. But you'll have to take off that long gown.
And Reverend Scott makes one final plea to the rest of them.
You stay here, you'll certainly die! We are staying with the purser!
And man, instead of describing himself as a hotel manager, he should have said that he's the world's greatest marketer because he sold these people on the infallibility of a purser. And he fails at life just like every purser before or after, and the room immediately begins flooding with seawater. I'm just gonna shut this door. There, that ought to do it.
No! Ready to fire! We'll go back! We'll go back!
For 30 years you've been telling me what to do. Now I'm telling you, we're going through.
Man, is this a Festivus movie? Because Mr. Rosen is definitely in the airing of grievances stage.
I'm surprised these lights are still working.
On an emergency circuit, sir. And batteries. Supposed to stay operational for 3 hours.
And that should be more than enough time. We should have this movie wrapped up in the next 45 minutes. Any longer, and the studios might decide to turn this into a miniseries on NBC or something. That's just a death knell for pictures. What is he talking about? The water begins flooding into the section that they're in, and they go up one flight of stairs and they find a shaft that they need to climb through.
Through that little hole?
Oh my god, Mrs. Rosen, you're not Winnie the Pooh. This is a man-made shaft for people to climb through. I think you'll make it. And my biggest problem with this movie is that they don't close any doors behind them. I mean, in the long run, it wouldn't prevent them from dying, but shut some doors. Like, yeah, that's the only door they've closed behind them. And that was just to muffle the screams of the doomed passengers. They make it down to another deck and they see another group of survivors led by a doctor. Reverend Scott yells that they're going the wrong way.
We're going forward!
Please, come with us, Reverend.
You're going the wrong way, damn it!
The other survivors ignore him, and Reverend Scott takes it out on Detective Rogo.
I told you I was going to get everybody out of here, and God damn it, I'm going to do it!
So the hierarchy for professions on this ship, it goes, purser is the lowest, We can all agree on that. Just a garbage profession. It's worse than being a gemologist. Next lowest is doctor, then you got police officer, and reverend is high up there, but the captain was already a god before he died, so sea captain is probably the top profession of 1972. No one knows what a haberdasher is. Do they make cookies?
If any of us are saved, I hope it's those two children. They still have their whole lives in front of them.
Stop giving our lives away.
Such heartwarming selflessness. I would expect nothing less from Grandpa Joe. And if it came down to it, I would use those children's bloated corpses as life rafts. They find the way to the engine room and water begins to fill up the passage again. The ocean has probably learned how to open doors by now. And the way to the engine room is flooded, so they have to swim 30 feet underwater through the wreckage, and Reverend Scott goes first to tie a rope for them to follow. Nope. I would rather die. Even if I'm in a boat. If my head goes under the ocean water, I'm drowning in like 30 seconds. Reverend Scott gets pinned under some debris, and so Mrs. Rosen dives in to rescue him, but she unfortunately suffers a fatal heart attack.
Mrs. Rosen is dead. We can't bring her back, but what we can do is keep moving and be strong. That's what she would have wanted.
And don't worry about Shelley. Her agent negotiated a better deal for this movie than any of us. And she'll go on to make interesting pictures. One in particular will be called Silence of the Hams. It'll be a really important movie to an awkward little boy from the Midwest. He will shit himself laughing at the scene with John Aston in the bowling alley. He won't have any friends, and it's not because he's shy and doesn't know how to open up. It'll just be because he's weird. He'll just be a weird little boy. So we need to keep moving so Shelley can get to her trailer and continue on to her next adventure. You know, I don't know that I like that they made Reverend Scott know about our world. Like, is he a time traveler who can go through dimensions? How the hell does he know about IMDb? He is correct about Silence of the Hams, though. An explosion bursts the steam pipe and the hatch to safety is blocked, and Mrs. Rogo falls to her death. And unlike Mrs. Rosen, Linda's death was in vain. They can't all have meaning. She just fell.
What more do you want of us? We've come all this way, no thanks to you.
And knowing what we know now, this isn't Reverend Scott talking to God. He's yelling at the screenwriter because he is 100% aware that he is in a movie. And the only entity more vengeful than God is a screenwriter, and they punish Reverend Scott for his insolence. And so that was the Poseidon Adventure. It's an enjoyable little disaster film starring Gene Hackman that shockingly has a sequel starring Michael Caine. Now, if only Turner Classic Movies would have had an afternoon double feature of the Poseidon Adventure and Beyond the Poseidon Adventure, then Pigman could have completed his thesis even earlier.